All right, everybody, so welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. So if you're new here, make sure to like, subscribe for more content. I got you covered when it comes to anything bass fishing. So today we're going to be covering a question that I get a lot, and that's how do you choose the right hard bait for what situation? And I'm just referring to what as, you know, a specific example. We're kind of going to cover every example that, you know, kind of comes to my mind when I'm using hard baits and why I would swap or moving baits in general, just to help you cover a lot more water, catch a lot more fish. Hopefully you'll build up a lot more confidence just by watching this video. So either way, stay tuned. It's something you don't want to miss. All right, so one of the first moving baits we're going to talk about. Now, here's the thing. I want you to understand this. When I'm talking about baits through this entire video, I'm giving you suggestions of what I use. I'm not telling you to go buy this or don't buy this, but these are the baits that I use, that I have the most confidence in. But, you know, you may have something a little different that you like to use or something you prefer. Same concept, different bait. Okay, now, talk about the first one, a swim bait. So whether we're talking about, you know, a 1/4 ounce swim bait like this one right here, the Rapala Crush City Mayor on a 1/4 ounce squadron head. This is the baby squadron head by Strike King. Whether we're talking about that or any other swim bait, I'm typically going to be throwing a swim bait on those times where it's kind of like right now. Okay, so we didn't have a lot of wind, right? So the wind's not just blowing like crazy, but there's a little bit of wind and it's kind of breaking up the surface. I love using a swim bait to run right below the top of the water, maybe, you know, no more really than a foot. Now it is okay to run it deep, and I do run them deep a lot, but like if I get like to an area that I haven't never really been to, you know, throwing this bait out there with, you know, just a slight wind around, even in heavy wind situations, but I'm typically going to throw this in lighter wind situations. But either way, you know, using it to throw it around and cover a lot of water in a short amount of time is a great way. Also, it's a great search bait. So if I'm running this bait in an area that I'm not very familiar with, kind of like y'all saw with the, you know, how to cover water effectively video, it's a good way to see if there's any life in that area. Just something following the bait, some kind of bait fish, some kind of brim, some kind of bass, anything like that is a great way. This is a great way just to locate fish and catch a lot of fish. You can run them on spinning setups. My smaller baits like this, the 3-inch, I'm going to run on a spinning setup. Typically, you know, my bigger swim baits, I'm running on like that 6 foot or 7'3" medium heavy taco rod. But either way, swim baits is a great way to cover a lot of water when it's it's not subtle, but it's not calm either, you know, or not windy, but not calm. It's kind of that in between. Great search bait, very, very natural looking baits. Every one of the products that I use, the boat wash, the all-purpose cleaner, the musket especially, comes in big handy. I think it's a great product as far as, you know, just for what I need, keeping everything nice, tidy, and clean, and doing it in a, you know, a quick, efficient way, right? Because I mean, I don't want to get home from being on the water for, you know, 12, 13 hours and then, you know, have to spend 2 more hours just cleaning up everything. So it, you know, it just made everything a lot quicker, a lot more efficient. The eco-friendly parts really got me, got a thumbs up for me, especially simply because I want to keep our outdoors clean because that's how I make my living. That's how, you know, me and my family enjoy our spare time also. So guys, I gotta say, I'm Colton with Colton Posey Fishing, and I highly suggest the Salty Captain products to keep my stuff clean. All right, so now talking about one of my absolute favorite baits to use, period, year-round, and that's a spinnerbait. So this is the War Eagle spinnerbait. I use War Eagle, Spot Sticker, and Booyah, and they all have their own reasons why I pick one over the other. If you haven't saw my spinnerbait video, go check it out, how to catch more fish than ever on spinnerbaits, something like that. But you'll just go back through my videos, you'll see it, or go to my playlist. I got it listed in there. Either way, you know, a spinnerbait is a great bait, especially when you got, you know, kind of that partially cloudy. So it's not just covered with clouds and it's not just super sunny. It's kind of that in between. And then you have a lot of wind. Anytime there's a lot of wind and the bait fish are kind of trying to stay close to the surface, man, a spinnerbait is a great way to cover tons of water, catch big fish, catch multiple fish. It is just a great absolute bait to run around cover, riprap, open water. That's one thing that I don't see a whole lot of anglers do. A lot of people do not run spinnerbaits in open water. When you see those fish come up in schooling, I like to swap to like the spot sticker and run that spot sticker spinnerbait through those bass that are schooling on, you know, those little like threadfin shad or anything like that, because that spot sticker, I can burn it through there and they're not really getting a good look at it. They're just reacting to it. That's one of the biggest things about using moving baits. You can just make fish react. You can get follows. You can figure out if there's fish in that area very quickly. You can cover a whole creek in a short amount of time with moving baits, and a spinnerbait is a great option. So, you know, if you get those windy situations, you know, a little bit of cloud cover, but you know, it's just real windy, pick up a spinnerbait, throw it around a little bit, find which one you feel comfortable in. Like I said, I throw the War Eagle mostly during the spring, I throw the Booyah a lot during the summer, and I throw the spot sticker a lot during the summer and fall. All right, so the next bait I want to talk about is one that I absolutely love to run year round. Now, most people know this bait as a wintertime bait, and yes, it absolutely is a wintertime bait, and that is a jerkbait, a hard jerkbait. A lot of people, like I said, use these during the winter. The you know, the slow pop, the long pauses, pop, 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 pause. You know, it's kind of like that reaction bait that you really prefer to run during the winter to, you know, hopefully entice big bass and to catch a lot of fish. But I run a jerkbait year round, so you know, if you're familiar with all my other videos, I love running a jerkbait during the spring, during the summer, during the fall, but I'm moving it very, very erratically. I'm moving it super fast. But a jerkbait, a hard jerkbait, you know, the smaller jerkbaits, the larger jerkbaits, depending on what kind of fishery you're on. You know, if I'm fishing Tennessee River and we got the big gizzard shads, then I'm gonna go with something like the Slash 110 or something like that. But you know, if I'm fishing a threadfin fishery or something like that, I may go with the Slash 80 or go with the Megabass 110 Junior. You know, the smaller baits compared to the bigger baits on fisheries when you're fishing with, you know, smaller bait, or you know, if you're on a fishery like Guntersville's got, you know, big shad in it, I obviously want to go to the big ones. But I'm going to be using this bait 99% of the time if I'm fishing around stuff like bridges, riprap, bluffs, any kind of steep incline or any kind of structure or cover those fish can push up against and position themselves maybe to ambush some type of bait fish, or you know, whatever they may be feeding on. But depending on the time of the year, I'm going to run it real erratically. Typically I like a good wind, not like a super strong wind where when I throw it, you know, the wind's just going to carry the bait wherever, but like a, you know, just a steady 5 to 8 mile an hour wind, little breaks in between, something like that. You get a little bit of wind, break up the surface, a little bit of clouds, or whether it's super sunny, it doesn't really matter with a jerkbait as long as they're really, really honed in on bait fish. It's a great way to target multiple fish and big fish. Okay, now we're going to get into the crankbaits. Now we're going to have 3 sections on the crankbaits. Okay, well, 4 actually. So we're going to have, you know, the lipless crankbaits, or rattle traps as people like to refer to them. We're going to have deep diving crankbaits. We're going to have those mid-range diving crankbaits, and then we're going to talk about square bill. So first, let's start with a lipless. When would I typically throw a lipless? So a lot of people throw a lipless during the summer. A lot of people, during the winter, a lot of people throw a lipless during the winter because you can run it in all depths. It's a great way to trigger bites just because of the vibration in the water and stuff like that. But there's really not a bad time to throw a lipless, you know, and there's multiple techniques to it. So, you know, maybe it's still calm, okay, and those fish are kind of going deep. You can jig a lipless crankbait, let it fall. You're gonna lift your rod tip, let it fall, lift your rod tip, reeling up the slack at the same time. A lot of times that will get fish that may be close to the bottom to come up. A lot of times the fish that are close to the bottom, you can take this bait, let it sink, and then tick the top of whatever you know, structures on the bottom, whether it's rocks or brush or anything like that. But you know, reeling it, popping it, stuff like that. You can do multiple different things with a lipless crankbait, but it's never really not a bad time to throw a lipless crankbait. It's just kind of depends on the mood on the fish. You know, are they willing to chase, or do they want it super slow or something like that? It's really 99% presentation when it comes to any type of crankbaits. You know, just getting it to move differently. So, you know, during the winter, most people's probably going to be slow winding it, so you may want to slow wind it, get it up off bottom, let it fall, you know, and then start slow winding it again and repeat the process. Maybe a lot of people not doing that. Now, during this time of year, during the late summer, early fall and stuff, I like to reel this bait fast, burn it, and then as I burn it, I kind of slow down, pop it a couple times like I'm working a jerk bait, and then start burning it again. A lot of times after those jerks and you go to burn again, the fish will load up on this bait. But, you know, run it in all different kinds of areas that you want to. I run it in creeks, run it in points. It just all depends on the season and what's going on. But a lipless crankbait is good at any time. Now, as far as my setup for a crankbait, 7-foot medium moderate action or fast action rods, Tyco series rod by Thunderhawk. You know, some type of medium moderate action rod, okay, with a fast tip. It just helps that load. So, you know, when those fish bite that bait and you set the hook, it's got really, really good bend to it. It's got a real soft tip, so that way, you know, you're not jerking the hooks out of the fish's mouth whenever you get bit. So, but that's lipless crankbaits. I kind of run them all different times of the year. It just depends on the mood of the fish, and are there different zones where they're staying. If they're close to the bottom, you know, suspended, or, you know, close to the surface, it doesn't matter. A lipless crankbait, you can, you know, cover all those depth ranges. Now, let's talk about deep diving crankbaits. So, you know, I run the 6XDs a lot, and then I also run the Rapala DT20s. So kind of going over the quick, or just real quick summary. If I throw the 6XD, it's typically going to be early to midsummer, and it's got that real super aggressive hunting action, okay? That's typically when I'm going to throw that 6XD. Now, the Rapala DT20 is when I'm going to throw something that I want something a little more subtle. Those fish are heavily pressured late summer, you know, but making sure these crankbaits get down to the bottom. I'm typically going to throw the deep diving crankbaits when we get a good bit of wind, or those fish are very, very deep and close to the bottom. Maybe I can't get them to bite on a jig or something like that, and I just try to get that school fired up. I'm going to burn this bait through it. But it's typically a presentation that I use late winter, or well, winter, throughout the entire winter, and, you know, early to midsummer, and then late summer for the Rapala DT series, especially just if any time those fish are close to the bottom in that 20-foot range, you know, or whatever depth between 15 and 20, then I'm going to choose the right crankbait to run in that depth. Now, the other one we're going to talk about is like a medium diving crankbait, so something that goes, you know, like 12 foot and under. Now, this is the Spro Rock Crawler 55. This is a great bait to run up against rocks or anything like that. I think Strike King's got their gravel dog out now. I haven't tried it, but it should be about similar, I would guess. I think that's what the Strike King gravel dog's modeled after, is this rock crawler. But, you know, either way, anytime fish are positioned close to the bottom on rocks, I'm typically going to be throwing these little crankbaits like this. You know, just depending on what range. You know, I may go to like a DT6 if those fish are 5 to 6 foot deep and they're wanting something a little more subtle. But, you know, wind plays a big factor. If we got a lot of wind, crankbaits are just hard to beat, because you're always going to feel those bites because your line's always tight. It's really hard to miss fish on a crankbait. But sometimes stale water, you know, those fish just position close to the bottom. Maybe they're chasing crawfish and stuff like that. A crankbait's a good way to go. The only thing I can say about crankbaits, in my personal opinion, I mean, I've run crankbaits my entire life. There isn't a whole lot of times to not throw a crankbait. Usually you can get bit on a crankbait or a jig if you can't get bit on nothing else, okay? But, you know, really keying in on what they're on. If they're on, you know, heavy rocks and stuff like that, and they're positioned close to those rocks, maybe their belly, you know, their bellies are up against the rocks, crankbaits are a great way to target those fish. Now, this is one of the most notorious search baits that you can use, and that's a square bill. This is the Thunderhawk A10 square bill. This has become one of my favorite square bills to run. Never thought I'd change my mind on the square bills that I typically like to run, but they changed my mind on it. And but either way, you know, a square bill, is a great way, kind of like the Lipless, to just cover a ton of water. There's never not a good time to throw a square bill. I've said this from day one on this channel. There's never not a good time to throw a square bill because you can cover so much water. I can mimic crawfish, I can mimic shad, I can mimic anything with a square bill. And getting those fish to react is typically not that irritating on a square bill as it can be, you know, running some type of soft plastic or anything like that. Same way, I'm throwing this out there, and as I'm burning it back to the boat or reeling it back to the boat or making it real erratic, I'm looking for life. I'm looking for shad to move away from it. I'm looking for bass to follow it. Anything I can do to get life, and once you find that life, you can slow down, or either they just eat it, either one. But either way, it's going to tell you something about what's going on that day. Are the fish willing to chase? Are they not willing to chase? Or are they just kind of following it for a second and then turning around going back? Or, you know, there's a lot of factors that goes into it. But I'm typically throwing a square bill, especially if I get a lot of heavy wind and those fish are out just roaming nomadically, or they're, you know, kind of suspended maybe off some grass or off a point or something like that. I am 100% picking up a square bill every time, and I'm going to run that bait through those fish. It's just a great way to cover a lot of water, catch a lot of fish, tons of fish, and also catch big fish. So either way, guys, that's how I choose, you know, whether or not I'm choosing one moving bait over another. I'm typically asking myself, is this the right tool for the job I'm trying to accomplish? If I'm going to a new fishery, or I'm going to a different part of a fishery that I'm used to, but I'm not familiar with the area that I'm going to fish, then I can say, hey, I'm going to pick up one of these baits and I'm going to target that zone and see if there's any fish active in those zones. Once you get one bite, that tells you a little bit. Second bite tells you a little bit more. Third bite, you're on a pattern, and pay attention to how you're catching them, exactly how you're catching them, because usually you can mimic it throughout that entire area. So guys, if the video helped you at all, make sure to like, subscribe for more content. I got you covered when it comes to anything bass fishing. If you like to talk fishing, just drop a comment down below. I like to hear from you guys. Also, I'm partnered with Thunderhawk Lures now, so if you want to get your hands on some really cool baits or really cool rods, go check those guys out. You see Posey 20 at checkout. They want to give you 20% off on your order, and it helps me out a whole lot, helps those guys out a whole lot. Also, we got new merchandise, new hats, new shirts, all kinds of stuff. If you like to check them out, go over to my Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. Check them out, send me a message. $25 shipped to your door. All different kinds of logos and stuff like that. But either way, guys, that's it. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.